This news segment of the Suburban Radio Hour is brought to you by Click Air. Their team of certified technicians and electricians got you covered for all your heating and cooling needs. Click-air.ca, where comfort meets quality.
Good evening, Montreal. Welcome to another edition of the Suburban Radio Hour. I'm Beryl Wiseman, editor of the Suburban, with my friends and colleagues, Anthony Bonaparte, features editor, Mark Littbetter, sports editor, and Mike Collin with everything you need to know about entertainment and society news. A lot of big stories in the paper this week. The English Montreal School Board is going to the Supreme Court on Bill 21. We're going to be looking at the Yellow Tort disaster, where our own Chelsea St. Pierre got a shocking admission from the Ministry of Transport, saying that it was shocked at the terrible things that are happening because they didn't hear any of this in their consultations. Interesting statistic from the OQLF that French use in public is actually not in decline. Côte-Neiges mayor is looking for leaders to fight anti-Semitism. That was, of course, the large police arrest of 10 alleged members of the South American theft group in the Pointe Claire jewelry heist. And CSL hockey parents are not going to be prioritized for ice time. Those stories and many more. But first, I want to lead off with what was our cover story, our lead front page story. We had the first mass arrest of some of these anti-Israel groups that were they've been demonstrating, but more than demonstrating, particularly where there is clear trespass and assaults and private property being vandalized. And this week we had the first mass arrest, 45 people arrested. This group had taken over the main Scotia branch at the Scotia Tower on Sherbrooke and Metcalfe across from McGill. A very special guest, our very special guest, is a former Montreal detective, Pietro Piletti, one of the most decorated detectives on the force. He later went on to be head of security in Hampstead. And Pietro Piletti, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Good afternoon, Bill.
Here's my first question to you. We have not been shy in expressing our displeasure at a newspaper that we have not had exactly full-throated condemnations by our mayor, not of the violence used in the words, not in the death to Israel or death to Jews of these anti-Israel groups, but the almost non-action of police in specific incidents where they were there. In many cases, I was there, where there were clear assaults and trespass. The assaults on Jewish students at Concordia, the trespass and assaults at Federation, the Jewish Community Federation building, the trespass and intimidation inside Place Ville-Marie. Suddenly, yes, there have been isolated cases. In Laval, the Laval police arrested one man, Bara Abu Hamed, for pushing a police officer when they went into Carrefour Laval, again, trespassing in a private space. But these instances have been few and far between. What do you think changed? And I bring this up in the context of Attorney Neil Oberman has been successful 5 times in getting injunctions, keeping some of these groups away from certain buildings. And the mayor finally said, well, it's the courts, so we have to respect the courts. Did that kind of mindset, when a politician says something, do the police get it as a signal that they can do something? Because this was rather extraordinary on Monday with these arrests. What is your view on it?
I think you answered your own questions, but it's not unique. Whenever the trespassers enter a private or a banking institution or university, police act immediately under article mischief or trespassing.
They can act, but they didn't act when the same group blockaded the Bronfman building at the business school at McGill just a week earlier.
Exactly. The field sergeant that was on patrol, they acted immediately. First of all, it was a banking institution. There was a plaintiff. There were workers in the place, and it was a sit-down. It was nonviolent. They knew they could succeed. Yes, the police is very politically influenced. This goes back to when they made one island, one city. The primary reason that was created was to have more political influence over the police department. Borough mayors would call directly to the station commander calls, and they have total influence. When it was the MUC, the Montreal Urban Community, there was very little political influence. Police acted on their own; they weren't scared to act, and basically.
That's interesting. Why did that change?
Well, first of all, to reign, you decentralize. You separate. There were powerful stations at the time. I got to know both systems. For instance, downtown station where I worked most of my career, Station 25, there was close to 280 police officers, 33 the same amount, 51. And it was hard to control according what they perceived. So they made all these satellite police stations, which haven't worked anywhere. Houston was the first police department that had created this.
When you say satellite, you mean the neighborhood police stations?
Neighborhood police stations. They started off with 49, we're down to 34. But in Quebec, we have this, and there's nowhere else in Canada has this system. It's only Montreal that's unique. So it's not effective. We have community police stations with 45 police officers, 50 at max, 8 per shift, or 3 when it comes to Station 9, Cold St. Luc and Hamilton, which is totally ridiculous. So officers are hesitant to act. They have to go through a chain of command, where it's a huge bureaucratic system. So it comes down to the mayor and the police chief. And we've seen when the police chief got sworn in, he came down the staircase at City Hall, arm in arm with Valerie Plante, which you would never see in the United States. You would never see that in Europe. And it's clear that she has a big influence. So the arrests weren't unique. It was just, we'll see May 1st is going to be huge demonstrations in Montreal. And they won't act because there's not one commanding officer at the command center. There's going to be 5, 6, or... So nothing's really has changed, Beryl.
Yet we have heard that there's actually a great deal of frustration between Chief Dagger with the mayor sending out signals of, caution and restraint. What would be your one recommendation to give both to the mayor and to the police if you had an ideal situation in terms of how to approach the situations where there are obvious violations just of city bylaws, of basic things like trespass, assault, that kind of stuff?
We got to restore credibility in our police department and accountability. And I've been saying this for years. We've known each other for over 30 years. We need a civilian board to overlook police actions and the appointment of police chiefs. A police chief today is a political appointment. He's a token. Police officers don't have the respect they should have. That father figure, the leader, is not there. And we've seen it. As soon as he was sworn in, the first few months, he was on the media. He was proposing, and they gagged him. We haven't seen Dagger in the last few months, nowhere.
That is true. Pietro Poletti, my thanks to you. The city thanks you for your service, and we'll be talking to you again as these things progress. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, we were on the ground at this incident, and I'm joined now by our Joel Goldenberg, who stayed through the whole event. Joel, good afternoon. Good evening, sorry.
Hi, how are you?
So how did it feel on the ground when you got there and the police were surrounding the buildings? And I believe you wrote that there was a considerable amount of time between the police surrounding the building, containing the situation, and actually going in, and questions were asked. When are you going in? How did it feel on the ground?
It felt like they were just standing there. Maybe they're afraid of cell phone cameras and they don't want to look too bad. Possibly forcibly removing these protesters. I mean, they were blocking the street. The street was blocked for hours. A very busy downtown street. Obviously the building was occupied for a long time, and nobody was doing anything for a long time. These people were just chanting the same thing over and over again, even taunting the police. Comparing them to the KKK and the Israel Defense Forces.
You're talking about the demonstrators on the streets, not the ones inside who were sitting down.
Not the ones inside. No, the ones outside. They were facing the police. The police were just, were standing there for a long time. Nothing was done for a long time.
When you say a long time, how long before the first of the protesters who were inside were taken out and they were given the tickets and the date to appear in court? How long?
It seemed to me like at least an hour or so. Maybe after I got there. I got there around 11 o'clock or so. So it was at least an hour, maybe even more, maybe an hour and a half. And people were just, most of the people were rather blasé. Passers-by were just blasé, just walking by. except for one person who I spoke to who was absolutely outraged. He was commenting to the police, so I approached them, and he said that these people just don't have the right to disrupt business and disrupt, life in downtown Montreal.
It's a question we had when there was the Red Square marches 9-10 years ago that Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois led, where day after day you had hundreds of thousands of students in the streets protesting over the tuition hikes, equivalent to a price of a cup of coffee, and day after day, downtown Montreal was blocked. No locomotion, no commerce, and it was the question of the balance of rights. It took the police quite a while to tell them, okay, you want to demonstrate, go to Mount Royal and demonstrate.
Right.
And when they started taking the protesters out of the bank, what did you see in terms of were they actually writing them tickets on the streets or inside?
We couldn't see what was happening inside because we were blocked by police tape. But as they took them out, they just led them out. They had them in, they were, accompanying them. But then down the street, down on Peel Street, they just said, basically let them go because they, with the promise to appear in court, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it was just, bye, go home. See you later.
Well, no, they also took their addresses, their names when they gave them the tickets,
right.
They know how to follow up these people.
Right.
Joel Golden.
We didn't see that outside. But I'm saying on Thursday, I was seeing a video of protesters at Columbia University being, restrained with zip ties and being led onto buses. A big difference.
I know you'll continue to follow this, and particularly the hearing dates for these 45, and making sure that who shows up and who doesn't show up. Joel Goldenberg, thanks very much for your great work.
Thanks.
There's all kinds of aggravations living in Montreal. These protests we've just been talking about, there's aggravations in many downtown cities, but we have something special for West Islanders and Off Islanders, and that is our famous Île-aux-Torts Bridge. And our Chelsea St. Pierre joins us right now. Got a startling admission, not only from a spokesperson from the Ministry of Transport, but the reactions of people to more delays, and while the bridge is supposed to be constructed, they're putting up new slabs on the sides to hold it up. But Chelsea, it was an extraordinary thing for Sarah Ben-Sadoun to tell you that she was shocked at these horrible reactions and stories because she didn't hear them during the consultations. How did you restrain yourself from laughing when she said that? Now you're laughing.
I am, because you hit it right on the nose. It was very difficult, actually, to remain professional and objective throughout that interview. Because she kept saying, je suis étonnée. And, I was very étonnée at her being étonnée about these community reactions that I threw
Sorry,
at her.
étonnée is shocked, folks, in case anybody missed
Shocked,
it. Go ahead.
Astonished, So I felt that way about her.
But what was extraordinary was she said that she didn't hear these matters brought up in the hearings. You covered some of the hearings,
of course she didn't.
But you covered some of the hearings. People were warning of this all the time, that
Absolutely.
Quebec can never stick to schedule. It's going to get worse. You can't move anywhere, and all of a sudden she's étonnée by the reactions of the very people you interviewed, which were, I'm particularly fascinated. Tragically, there's some tragic stories in there, like the pregnant woman who had to turn around in her car.
Yeah, and go back home and miss her medical appointment. I've spoken to at least dozens of people who have had medical issues related to this. I picked one out of a hat, and I'm going to be doing a full focus interview with her tomorrow to discuss her situation in detail. We'll see it in next week's Suburban. It's the public consultations that she kept referring to, Beryl, were between 2015 and 2021, held at municipalities but hosted by the MTQ. The MTQ, as per what she says,
Ministry of Transport of Quebec,
supposedly unaware of the fact that that this closure would take place at the same time up until 2022, 2021, 2022, with the annual inspections, because apparently they couldn't know before that any of this could happen. Though in the same interview, she also says that, well, c'est normal. It's normal that a structure will need this type of work as it reaches its end of life after 50 years. So it was she kept contradicting her statements. And, I included that in the article in as much of a comprehensive way as possible. But I did ask her the same questions over and over again because she continued to read from a script that was giving me technical details that had nothing to do with my question. So,
Chelsea, that term of yours, we all look forward to your forthcoming articles. But that term you just used, end of life, will stay with me. There seems to be a lot of end of life in Quebec on so many things. And thank you for your great work. Thank you for the great article, Anthony Bonaparte, my colleague, friend, but one of the most brilliant cartoonists. Talk about end of life, Anthony. Your cartoon with the 3 stages of the referendum, this is like another end of life. Yeah. Or a never-ending life in Quebec.
It keeps going and keeps going and going and going. I mean, I don't know.
Never-ending referendum.
There you go. After Paul Saint Pierre Plamondon, the man with too many names, went ballistic last week with his hair on fire, I think we all lost it. Like, here we go again.
And from a man who has a graduate degree from Oxford or Cambridge,
yes, he's
very civilized, very refined.
But he's a politician.
You keep saying that.
Yes.
But to say that the history of French Canadians is all about deportation and execution,
yeah. Well,
really,
it gets votes.
Really,
with the ignorant masses. There we go again with the masses.
I can't imagine any of you listeners haven't seen Anthony's cartoon, but you should. It features 3 panels of somebody from 1980 referendum, somebody from 1995 referendum, and the forthcoming end of life, never-ending life, as Mark just said, story in Quebec on referendum. And the hair's getting grayer, and the hair's getting less, and the shoes are getting more frayed, and because we can't afford anything today anyway. So it's just brilliant. You'll put it on your wall. You'll cut this one out. You're listening to the Suburban Radio Hour on CJD 800. Coming up next, features editor Anthony Bonaparte. But first, we're off to the CJD Traffic Center.
This news segment of the Suburban Radio Hour is brought to you by Click Air. Their team of certified technicians and electricians got you covered for all your heating and cooling needs. Click-air.ca, where comfort meets quality.